Renaissance, a dynamic time when artist creativity exploded. A time when new techniques in art were formed that revolutionized the face of art. A time when artists such as Da Vinci, Michelangelo, Botticelli, and many others saw a new lease on life and started to convert what they saw onto canvases or chapel ceilings. Due to this change, art was revolutionized forever.
But what could have brought this incredible revolution in art? Some experts say many things, but from our research, we include the main reason for this drastic change was because one of the group of people, the patrons. This group of people included the wealthiest aristocrats of any city-state in northern Italy. Due to their wealth, they funded most of the artists of this time period. As a result, patrons allowed all the artists to express themselves more freely without being trapped by religious themes forced onto them by the church. By this we mean the church was blocking an immense abundance of creativity due to the fact that they were the most wealthy group of people around during the time. But the patrons broke the shackles the church had on the artists by funding these new artists to do what they wanted to do, to create freely. For example, because there were new options, artists like Botticelli were able to create different style, like his own famous paintings, Birth of Venus, based on Greek and Roman thought.
Due to the fact that more artists started to emerge, it was only natural that new techniques would as well. Some of the most defined parts of the Renaissance art revolution were the new techniques that were developed in that time period. These defined a new era in art. Here are 3 techniques that were used most during the Renaissance. The first key technique is perspective. This is probably the most important technique that came out of the Renaissance, since it is the most used technique today. Perspective uses angles and geometry to show different perceptions from the human eye. The second technique is called mannerism, which was the use of odd proportions and lack of clear perspective. Sfumato is the third technique. This is when there are no extreme darks or lights in a painting, a lot like painting with no contrast. An example of the sfumato art technique is the Mona Lisa. Due to the new techniques, art had drastically changed since the Middle Ages. For example, paintings from the Middle Ages is two-dimensional, has no depth, perspective, or realism. Compared to the Renaissance painting, this was child's art technique. Giotto was a famous painter who painted in the sala fresco, another popular art technique in the Renaissance. Fra Angelico, who was also like Giotto, was from the Middle Ages, when art was very two-dimensional. Artists like Michelangelo's painting The Creation of Adam and Leonardo's painting of Mona Lisa both had revolutionized the idea of depth, perspective, and realism.
In the Renaissance, you can actually see what you are drawing. An everyday object as simple as a tree, unlike in the medieval times when only biblical paintings were acceptable, the artists in the Renaissance made lots more money because of this factor. Although the patrons gave money to the artists, there were still some tensions between the two groups of people. For example, both great artists, Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo, both had different ideas to what they had in mind for their creations, which is why both artists had many projects they never finished. For example, one of the most significant tensions between the patrons and the artists is when the church was involved. For example, Michelangelo argued and disagreed with Pope Julius II. While Michelangelo was not familiar with the artwork and style and paintings that the Pope wanted, but well known for his statues, he still agreed to begin the massive project. Battling against bad health, money issues, where the Pope was running out of money to fund him, the Pope's impatience for the chapel's recreation, and the bitter rivalry with the brilliant young painter Raphael. Michelangelo created scenes so beautiful and breathtaking that they are still considered one of the most amazing masterpieces of all time. This art was very engaging. The way that it captured the people's interest during the time of the Renaissance shifted worldview dramatically.
Art was an amazing influence to the Renaissance. It created a whole new way of thinking, introduced the new way to think about life, with there being a new demand for his newfound art. The art became more in demand for things like the Bible because non-educated and illiterate people in society could not always read Latin. The churches hired artists to make art for the Bible so that everyone could interpret the praises in the Bible. Due to this, some of the most astonishing art was created. For example, The Creation of Adam. Michelangelo was one of the most famous paintings that came out of the Renaissance and is still famous today. And even though Bible paintings are still painted, a new, more popular style of art started to emerge. One that did not carry the religious art style. With new ideas developing of humanism and a demand from the mechanist of more specular paintings became more popular, the varieties in the paintings ranged from landscape to portrait of a family or patron himself. Another way that the Renaissance and the churches influenced art was by synthesizing it with science. Due to this, many elaborate and beautiful structures such as the Sistine Chapel, not only did it influence the world of art and science, but influenced their culture. It reintroduced the old Greek and Roman buildings. Many Greek buildings use a style of architecture they exceedingly strong and used little material in the process. Also, the marble wasn't cheap, and they had an abundance of it at the time.
The Renaissance was a time of great reconcile. People in art were remarried once again, like they were in Greek and Roman times. Due to this remarriage, many other areas of living also improved, such as science, music, philosophy, and overall quality of living, all because of one small area of life that could drastically change the worldview of people forever.